Hi everyone, Dr. Krisha here, and today is a super exciting webinar. I'm so thrilled to be giving this one because it's all about stress, and we're all experiencing so much stress, like a profound amount of stress. It's actually pretty ridiculous. So this webinar, webinar 8 for the Summer of Health series is all about REST 102. So we're going to talk about the anatomy of stress. What does that actually mean? The autonomic nervous system, the two different branches off of that. What happens when you have the acute stress, the chronic stress, and what can we do to get rid of it? Well, get rid of it in the sense of like manage it better. All right, so oops. There we are. So again, today is all going to be about adding rest in the everyday. Last week we talked about all about sleep. So how can you improve your rest at nighttime? Now it's daily. So the anatomy of stress. So first we have the autonomic nervous system. So the autonomic nervous system is the way, you know, your body kind of controls everything in your system. And it's automatic. We don't consciously control it. And it actually all starts in the hypothalamus, which is in the brain. And there's two different systems, which you probably heard about, the sympathetic nervous system or the fight or flight, and then the parasympathetic nervous system, which is the rest and digest. So it's one or the other. You can't have, you are either more sympathetic or like in that sympathetic state or that parasympathetic state. And when you're in the stress response, you're in the sympathetic nervous system, that fight or flight response. And so back in the day, this is what would happen. You'd see a tiger, and then that would register as, right, a threat. And so back in the day, we'd be able to actually see the tiger, and then we use our sympathetic nervous system and then run away, which is the great thing. So let's look at that in this with this little diagram. So you see here, you have this person and he sees, say, that tiger, and then the tiger gets filtered, that image of the tiger goes first actually through the amygdala. The amygdala is our animal brain. That's our emotional center. And the amygdala goes like, oh crap, there is a tiger, there is a threat, which then sends a very fast signal to the hypothalamus, right there in the brain. And then the hypothalamus sends its signals really quickly to the rest of the body. And what it does is two different parts to it. So the first thing is that the autonomic nervous system goes straight into that fight or flight. And it via the autonomic nervous system, right? It triggers that sympathetic nervous system response, and it actually tells the adrenal glands. So the adrenal glands are actually, you see those little kidneys? It's the little hats on top. They're super cute, and so incredibly important for the stress response. So that adrenal gland actually has different parts to it, and so the different parts of the adrenal glands, there's actually 3 different parts to it, but the ones that we really care about are the adrenal medulla and the adrenal cortex, 2 different sections of it. And so the adrenal medulla is actually that first part that's going to get activated, and what it does is it releases norepinephrine. Norepinephrine is adrenaline. So right, that then is going to cause all of these different actions within your body. And so that's the very first part of the sympathetic nervous system, is that it goes right and it talks to the adrenal glands. Adrenal glands then release norepinephrine, adrenaline, and then that adrenaline is going to cause your blood pressure to increase so that you can actually get blood to the tissues, right? Because if you see a tiger, what's your game plan? Like, I'm leaving. What that then means, right, is we want all of our muscles to be really activated, to have lots of blood. And so blood pressure is going to increase in order to do that. We also are going to mobilize our liver glycogen stores into glucose. So glycogen is just basically like the sugar storage, and then what the liver is going to do with it, like norepinephrine, and what it's going to tell the liver to do is release all the sugar, because I need to mobilize it. I'm either going to have to fight this tiger, which I personally don't want to do, or I'm going to run away from the tiger. Either way, I need energy to do that, right? So that's where the liver then comes into play. Now, you also going to have increased heart rate, right? Because well, for me, I'm running at this point. And then the bronchioles, or your lungs, are going to really dilate. So what that means is they're going to get bigger so that you can actually get more oxygen in, because we're running, so we need more oxygen to float our muscles so that they can keep going, and right, or if you're fighting whatever it is, threat, same thing. Now, the important thing is it's an acute stress, right? So at some point we'll actually get away from the tiger. Which then means it's not that big of a deal, but like in the moment, during this acute stress, when you see the tiger, does it really matter if you're digesting your food? No, it totally doesn't, right? Because you're either going to be sadly tiger food, or you're going to get away from the tiger and then the threat's gone. And so then at that point, maybe it will matter to digest your food, but right now it doesn't. So this is all important because, now, say the threat persists, right? So you get that initial go and you're still unfortunately within eyesight of a tiger. So you want to keep running, right? So this is then when your body, your hypothalamus continues to tell your adrenal glands, this time is going to tell the adrenal cortex, the other part of it, to release cortisol. The way that it does that is actually through what we call the HPA axis. So that's the hypothalamus, the pituitary gland, which is in the brain, so it's really close by. It's actually this little part that hangs down right there. So that's the pituitary. The pituitary gland is then going to release more hormone to actually then stimulate the adrenal glands to then release cortisol. The importance of cortisol, which is that stress hormone, is that it keeps it tells the body to keep revving. There is still that tiger nearby. We need to keep going. And cortisol is what makes you to keep going, right? It's like that gas pedal, it just keeps going. The problem is if it doesn't stop. Okay, so that's kind of like and the catecholamines are the norepinephrine and the adrenaline that they're talking about here. And so that's then going to cause all those actions, reinforcing everything that the initial nerve response created with that initial norepinephrine burst. So that norepinephrine, right, triggered the whole cascade, and the hypothalamus is the one that's continuing that signal. And so if we go here, so like now you actually get away from the tiger. So with that perceived threat gone, your hypothalamus now stops yelling at your pituitary gland, which then stops yelling at your adrenal glands from producing the cortisol. So now you can actually stop revving the system to be on high alert, so you can actually calm down, right? As those cortisol levels fall, you're now getting out of that fight or flight response and now into the rest and digest, or that parasympathetic nervous response, which is so incredibly important because now, right, you're actually going to be able to have a lower heart rate. So your cardiovascular system's not going to be as taxed. You can now start digesting your food because right now we're in that rest and digest phase. And then a bunch of other things are going to happen, and they're on the next slide. So what happens though if that stress never ends, right? So say now you get chronic stress because the tiger nowadays is not a tiger, unfortunately, right? If it was a tiger, and I mean unfortunately in the sense that a tiger usually will go away at some point. But unfortunately, our stress now is the news. It's, you know, the emails, the instant messenger, it's those constant notifications, which are unfortunately a little bit harder to get away from. Or in the situation right now is a pandemic, completely out of our control in some regards, right? And so because of that, we have this chronic stress that we just have to learn how to manage because we don't want these negative consequences. For example, if you're having that chronic stress, your HPA axis, again, that's the hypothalamus, the pituitary, and the adrenal gland, they all talk together in order to keep pumping out cortisol. And so that axis is going to be constantly activated and just continually pumping out cortisol. And then it's going to keep revving your system nonstop, causing anger, right? Because that amygdala is constantly being activated as well, because it's like, oh crap, there's still this threat there. Anxiety, depression, difficulties focusing, concentrating, that's all because of adrenaline. So what happens right over time, if your body is constantly pushing out, constantly dripping out adrenaline and norepinephrine, epinephrine, those hormones, those neurotransmitters eventually will get depleted. And when you don't have enough norepinephrine, you get anxious, you can get depressed, really have difficulties focusing or concentrating, right? Because if you think about it in the short term, right, when we're stressed in that acute stress, it's good to be able to focus. But if you're constantly just dripping out like you don't have any more, now you're going to have the effects of the low norepinephrine, which is the opposite things. And then high blood pressure, because cortisol constantly is being spewed out, which is telling the nervous system to keep the blood pressure high in order to keep the circulation to the muscles. That also means you can now also have, progress into heart disease, because with that high blood pressure, it's like essentially you have a rubber band, right? If you think about your blood vessels in that context. So it's like a rubber band, and normally it has really good elasticity where it kind of goes and it bounces back. But now you have this constant stress, this constant pressure, right? And so now essentially that rubber band's getting stretched out so much. Now you can have disease within the blood vessels and heart disease. Fatigue, because you just don't have the norepinephrine, or also you're not getting as much rest, right? Because also going to cause insomnia, because your cortisol levels are going to be all janky. And the reason cortisol is important in this context is that cortisol and melatonin, which is the hormone that makes you tired, actually have an inverse relationship, which means when cortisol is high, it's actually highest right when you wake up. It's actually the thing that wakes you up in the morning. And it'll slowly decline over the day, which will make you a little bit more tired, right? Because cortisol is what's making you on high alert. But now you're constantly on that high alert. So you're constantly having cortisol levels. And so now even at nighttime, you're on high alert, right? And so your cortisol levels are relatively higher, which then means your body still thinks, I need to be jacked up. I need to be very, very alert. And what that does then is bring down your melatonin levels so you're not tired, right? Because if in that situation, if there's, say, a tiger creeping around at night, I have no idea if that could be a thing, but maybe, and you wouldn't want to fall asleep. So, right, that's going to then shunt your melatonin response. And so over time, that then is going to have those negative effects of making you have a severe insomnia, because you're never able to fall asleep because those cortisol levels are just constantly revving, keeping you up. All right, and then it keeps going, because now you're also going to have low libido, because if you're constantly stressed, if there's a tiger, if you see a perceived threat, do you really care about making babies? No, your body's like, nah, we need to conserve, we need to focus on me and making sure that I can survive. So then you're going to have reproductive and hormonal issues because of that, right? Because now your reproductive system is just shunted, it's suppressed, it's right on. It needs to be on lowdown. And digestive complaints just as well, right? Because if you remember the other one, that if there's a tiger chasing you, we don't care about our digestion, just like we don't care about our reproductive system. And so now you're going to have chronic digestive complaints, whether that's indigestion, heartburn, you name it, like all of those things are then going to just be chronic, because you're never getting into that rest and digest phase. So literally you're eating your food, but you're never actually really digesting it and utilizing it effectively, just because your blood supply is not in the digestive tract, instead it's in the muscles. Then you're going to have weight gain and high blood sugar. And the reason for that, right, is because that cortisol and that norepinephrine is constantly telling the liver to release glucose into the bloodstream, which is going to drive the high blood sugar. Cortisol levels chronically over time tells your body that I need more calories, and so then you actually get more weight gain, but you're not actually utilizing your muscles and exerting that same amount of effort, and so then you're going to have weight gain, right, from the increase in calories because you're craving it from the cortisol, but then not actually like exercising it off. And then it also, again, changes your hormones, which then can then negatively affect your metabolism absolutely. And then what actually is incredibly important for our times right now is that it lowers your immune response, because just like if a tiger was chasing you, you didn't care about your reproductive system, your digestive tract, do you really care about your immune system in the acute moment? No, because if that tiger gets you, then it's all downhill, right? It doesn't matter. So then you end up having, it doesn't matter if you had that bacterial infection, viral infection, whatever. It only matters when you actually are out of that threat, because the bacterial infection isn't what's going to kill you, it's the tiger. And so then we have that lowered immune response. But then again, if that continues, if that tiger never goes away, we just have a lowered immune system all the time, which is not beneficial, right? It's like you're only utilizing that one aspect of your nervous system, right? The sympathetic, and you're not getting all of that other benefits of the rest, the recovery. All right, so all of that to say, it's all about being more parasympathetic. So we really want to focus on just creating more of being in that relaxed state. So focusing on sleep, incredibly important. Doing the nutrition is going to help as well, because you're actually putting in those nutrients, the building blocks for rebuilding, like making sure you have enough supply of cortisol and of norepinephrine, so that when you do need to be in that stress response, you have the means and you're not depleting your current stores. So I do that really often for those who are really on overdrive, high stress jobs, or honestly just existing in today's world is very stressful, and we're at that point now where this is chronic stress, right? It's been 4 months of the same kind of stress, and so now we're starting to see more, at least what I'm seeing more in office, is the insomnia, more of the digestive complaints, and the anxiety and the depression, honestly. And that all comes again from not having your adrenaline, your norepinephrine is just taxed. You just don't have enough of it because you've constantly been dripping out slowly over time, and that you're just empty. And so what I do then is often will, like with nutrition, make sure that you're getting enough protein, because protein, those amino acids, are the building blocks for your neurotransmitters. And I'm actually going to talk more about that in the next section, in the mind, where we'll get all into the nitty gritty of neurotransmitters. But there is also a short talk that I did about that on my website if you want a preview now. So anyways, nutrition is so incredibly important. The foundations that we've already talked about, like the nutrition, making sure that you're actually taking some time to digest your food is going to be so incredibly helpful. And then moving your body, exercise, right? So they're in that particular order where we focus first on the nutrition and the digestion and the movement, because they're building blocks or foundational for all of the rest of things that we're talking about, such as being more parasympathetic. And when I think about stress, honestly, it's rather impossible to eliminate it completely. That we just can't do that. And we have different kinds of stressors, right? We have the physical, we have the emotional, we have the mental stress, and they all play different they tax us in different ways. And so it's important to, when you're thinking about how do I get more parasympathetic, is checking all those places, you know, making sure that you're also doing physical recovery, that you're also getting the mental recovery and the emotional recovery. And what I think about because we can't eliminate stress, it's about managing it. And so I always think about a candle. I personally love to burn candles. I just like the smell. And also it's like the dancing with the light and all that other stuff. Anyways, I think about our stress response as a candle burning. So when you're in that sympathetic nervous system response, you're burning your candle. And as that candle burns longer and longer, right, the wax will start to get hotter and hotter and hotter, such that it will actually melt faster, which then means that overall candle is going to burn for a shorter duration because it's constantly burning, right? Now, however, if we blow out that candle and let it just cool down for even say 5 minutes, that wax will then, right, start to get a little bit harder, where now if I light it again, even again, if it was only like 5 minutes later, it's going to burn a little bit longer. And so that's what we're trying to do when it comes to manage our stress or that stress response, is just switch back into that parasympathetic state, even if it's just briefly, in order to turn that gas off and give a little bit of recovery. So how can you do that? Deep belly breathing. You had to have known I was going to bring that up. So the deep belly breathing is a lovely reminder, because literally everyone can do it all of the time, any of the time, is really focusing on using the diaphragm. So again, the diaphragm is that muscle right around the rib cage, and it's dome shaped like this. And so literally what happens when you breathe is it gets pulled down like that, gets shorter, and then you breathe, right, lungs fill up. But the reason utilizing your diaphragm is so incredibly important for the stress response, or modulating the stress response and putting you into the parasympathetic nervous system state, is because it is innervated by the vagus nerve. The vagus and it's part of the vagus nerve that is directly part of the parasympathetic. So you literally cannot deep belly breathe without being in the parasympathetic state. That's pretty cool. That means you can actually decide when to be in the parasympathetic nervous system response, right? Just by doing those deep belly breaths. I really love doing it before meals because seriously, there's no better time to be in the rest and digest phase than right before a meal. I love doing it before bed if I can't sleep, a little bit of, if I'm just feeling a little bit restless, if I just focus on my deep belly breathing, it makes a world of a difference for me to fall asleep a little bit faster. If I'm having a little bit more anxiety from one reason or another, or actually even if I just had a little bit too much caffeine, I will lay down on the floor and just focus on my deep belly breathing for a couple minutes, and everything will get better because it's switching my nervous system from that sympathetic nervous system response into that parasympathetic nervous system, which then is going to tell my heart rate to slow down. It's going to tell my blood pressure to calm down, right? To go down. It's going to pull me away from that anxious state because now I'm not having that cortisol and that norepinephrine flooding my system, telling me to be like on alert and on edge. So deep belly breathing. Do it all the time. I still really like doing the hand, one on the chest, one on the abdomen, and I'll just demonstrate it because why not? So hand on chest, and I encourage you all to do it with me because why not? So one hand on the chest, one hand on your abdomen, and again, all we're focusing on is moving this one. So let's take some nice deep belly breaths. And hopefully you could see really this hand was moving and this one wasn't that much. And that's what you're striving for. And honestly, like I just did five deep belly breaths is enough to kind of switch you over into a little bit more of that parasympathetic state. You can always go a lot longer. But even if you, like, honestly, if you just need a quick reset, like 5 deep belly breaths will make a world of a difference. Of course, if you're having more stress, longer time is going to be more helpful. Okay, so that's deep belly breathing, and that segues perfectly into meditation. So meditation, right, really works partly on breath work, and same thing with yoga, which is one of the other reasons I really love it, especially during this more stressful time period. But long-term, consistent meditation actually increases resiliency to stress. So in that particular study, what they found was that experienced meditators actually had less norepinephrine and cortisol secreted when they were in a similar stress response as those who were new to meditation or hadn't done it before. And so, right, by just being consistently meditation, you can actually decrease your ability to, not decrease your ability, you can make yourself more resilient to stress by making sure that it's not taxing your system as much as if you weren't doing that consistent meditation. So that's pretty awesome. And it reduces stress, anxiety, depression, right? Because it's just putting you into that parasympathetic nervous system response. It actually has been shown, all the different types of meditation have all been shown to actually change the way that your brain works. So it actually increases focus, happiness, and compassion. Pretty cool. And a bunch of other amazing things with the meditation, because it all, again, just really plays on the fact that our brain is so plastic, which means it's really pliable. We can really change aspects of our brain by doing, say, meditation, right? Where it's actually changing it so that you are able to focus better. It actually takes some of that focus away from the amygdala and into other parts of the brain, also increasing happiness. And then again, the compassion, it actually activates a very particular part where we're more selfless. So again, pretty darn cool. If you have not meditated before, some great resources in terms of apps is Headspace. What I would like best about Headspace is that it has not 1 minute, it has these quick short videos, guided meditations. They're like 1 to 3 minutes, called SOSs. Super helpful if you're just in the acute moment and you just need to kind of remove yourself from that. Plug in the headphones, and then Headspace, one of the SOSs, can be really powerful. Calm is another app. They have a free version and a paid version, just like Headspace. And then there's Insight Timers. Calm also, I believe, has a deal right now for teachers, I believe. And then Insight Timer is also really helpful for unguided. It's literally just a timer, and it can play like some music in the background. Simple Habits, also another great one. And those are just some of the apps that I've felt with. I don't have affiliation with any of them. I just want to give you the resources of some of the ones that I've found helpful. And then of course there's YouTube. So you can literally YouTube meditation. There's guided, there's unguided. And honestly, even if you're just focusing on deep belly breathing and, you know, you find that your mind just kind of keeps coming back to certain thoughts, that's fine. You know, you're learning, it's a practice. And so just keep working on it. And again, if meditation's not your jam, that's fine. It's not necessarily for everyone. Do some just deep belly breathing or one of the many other tips that I'm going to tell you right now. Okay. And so another thing that has actually been shown is aromatherapy. So that's a picture of lavender, which is growing like crazy right now. And it alters your brain waves to actually put you in a more relaxed state, reduces stress and cortisol levels. So really helpful for that. So literally you can just have lavender essential oil, smell that. Lavender, there was a study that actually shown that decreases crying fits in infants. So that's pretty cool. Just, I guess if you have an infant, just put lavender mist like everywhere, so they just don't cry as much, so you can get more sleep and more rest. And then there's also a bunch of different ones. I just did lavender because it's one a lot of that is very well researched, but you can even do other essential oils or a blend of them. I like to kind of make my own blend. The biggest thing with essential oils is there's only a few that you can put topically. It's better to put them in like a diffuser, or if you're going to actually use it on your body, put it in a carrier oil, because essential oils can be very caustic, meaning that they can cause like burns in the chemicals, the constituents in the plants are just very, very concentrated in essential oil, right? It's literally like thousands of pounds of plant matter that's within that you took to make that essential oil. Lavender happens to be one of the few that you can apply directly onto the skin. And so great places for that is like right on the wrist right here. I like to just do that and then smell it there. Or it's also helpful if you're, for like stress headaches and things like that, like on the temples, can be really helpful. And play. So play is so important. I think that us adults don't do it nearly enough. So relieve stress by literally just doing more things that you find enjoyable. Because if you are doing things that you find fun and enjoyable, that means that it is not a threat, right? It's not, you're not going to perceive it as a threat. Instead, right, it's a joy. And so that's inherently going to put you in a more parasympathetic state. And then like take a vacation or a staycation, considering the times. Either way, like do something that you find enjoyable, whether that means like going for a hike, doing, like literally playing a game, or whatever it is that you like to do, literally do more of it, because you can definitely find more joy in your life. And it's a great way to combat stress. So why not? Laugh. So laughter is so incredibly important. In Chinese medicine, it is actually associated with tonifying the heart. So that's really great for our emotional selves. And right, it also triggers all of those deep emotions as well. It releases like those wonderful endorphins. This is actually a photo that I took last Christmas when I visited my family, and my sister and myself, we were taking photos. And I don't even remember what I found hysterical, but it was absolutely funny. And this is the photo that they got caught. I showed my boyfriend, and he's like, oh, it's like you and the llama have an inside joke. And we kind of do. Laughter is where it's about. So laughter, right, has always been said to be one of the life's greatest medicines, and it really is. So take a moment, even if that's daily would be fantastic, to just do some laughing. So if you like cute animal videos, or, America's Funniest Home Videos, something along those lines, just look, take a moment, whether it's like, a couple minutes, whether it's beginning of your day or the end of your day, to just find something that you find funny so you can laugh and get all those wonderful endorphins, and essentially blow out that stress candle for even a few moments, so that you can recover a little bit better. And physical intimacy. So physical intimacy, like cuddling, right, releases the oxytocin, which is the that feeling of bondship, that community, and then you also release a bunch of other endorphins. And if you know, sex in particular, when you act like orgasms is a great way to be in that parasympathetic state, because you literally cannot be in that stress response and have an orgasm, because it's just not how the physiology works. So physical intimacy, you know, as long as it's consensual and all that wonderful jazz. Acupuncture. So acupuncture is so incredibly helpful for so many things. And I picked this particular photo because it is yin tong right here. So have you ever seen folks when they're really stressed and they're like rubbing their eyebrow right there? That's because they're using acupressure, probably unintentionally. But this point right here, yin tong, is a super fantastic point that you can just stimulate yourself whenever you're feeling more stressed, because what it does is it just kind of goes, brings down your energy. So if you're feeling like you're too much up in here, like in your head or in the ethers, you know, not actually grounded, doing like acupressure right on there can be really helpful. It's a little bit more sedating. So what I'd like to do with that one is I will actually, it's a little bit challenging on myself, but it's, you know, my crown, and then I like to stroke upwards like that, and then usually we'll tie it in with a little bit of a massage into the temples, but you can also, you know, rub it that way, or, you know, the classic like that. You're still getting it. It's right between the eyebrows, right in there, yin tong. Super fantastic just for you to do at home. And then I'll also mention another great one, which is gallbladder 20. So right here, kind of last webinar, I talked about Anyan, which is the one for restful sleep, which is also right along the same area. So what you're shooting for is kind of like where your neck muscles go, and then you hit that bone, part of your skull, where your skull literally sits on your head. That's the point. It's a pretty big point, so you kind of feel it. It's like a little divot. So again, right in there. And that point, I like to put my hands like this and just rub all right there, and like that. And that also helps to promote some of the energy from leaving, from going up here down into the body, so that you're getting a little bit more better energy flow in terms of Chinese medicine. And then it also is just super relaxing. Like, who doesn't like a neck massage, really? Self-care. So self-care is in so many different aspects. So you have the Epsom salt soaks. I love Epsom salt soaks. One of my favorite things is honestly doing an Epsom salt soak. So getting 2 cups of Epsom salt per bathtub. And then I love to do it a little bit before bedtime, so not right at bedtime. If you were or watched the last webinar, if you do it too close to bedtime, especially now where it's really hot, you're probably not going to feel really comfortable. So you don't have to have the, now that it's, you know, summertime, you don't have to have the, whether the water is so incredibly hot, just warm. And what that's going to do is the Epsom salt is magnesium sulfate. So it's magnesium based. You will actually absorb a little bit through the skin. So it's going to help a little bit with that muscle relaxation. The other thing is that you're going to get heat to the muscles, which will also help the muscles to relax a little bit more, which I just find that when we're chronically stressed, we tend, at least I do, people tend to hold a lot of the stress. What I've noticed in practice is that's mostly in the neck and the shoulders, and then also in the low back. And so getting heat and the magnesium on those muscles can help for them to actually relax, so they're not so rigid and stiff. And then, so that's that. You can't do anything for like 15 minutes. So literally you're sitting in a bathtub for like 15, 20 minutes. Like read a book or do something that you enjoy, or literally do nothing. Literally do nothing. That's perfectly fine. And so you're getting self-care with that, which then, right, is going to put you right into that parasympathetic nervous system response, which is what we're trying to do. The other thing is that if you actually close the shower curtain, it will help to create a little bit more of a sauna-like effect. And the benefit of that is that it's going to increase your body temperature, which can help to boost your immune system a little bit. So basically like creating an artificial fever. And so that just kind of helps to rev up your metabolism as well. and then you sweat, right? You sweat, so you'll get a little, some detoxification from that as well. And then if you do it at bedtime, so like an hour, 2 hours before bed, you'll actually have enough time to cool off, and you'll already be in a more relaxed state. As long as you don't do something like, don't watch like Unsolved Mysteries or something that's gonna get you all jacked up after being all nice and relaxed. Do something that's still relaxing, and then you'll go to bed, and it should make a big difference. I do like to end the Epsom salt soaks, especially now that it's hotter, with a cold rinse, because that just will decrease your body temperature faster, because it's going to shunt all of your, once just literally cools you off, but it also shunts your blood supply to your core. So you're actually getting it all back into your organs rather than in your muscles and the rest of the periphery. And then the other great thing about the Epsom salt soak is it's literally free. It's really cheap to do, really cheap. And if you're having muscle pains, it can be really powerful medicine and very cost effective. Hide from your kids. This is partially a joke. Whether that means playing, fantastic. Or if you're a parent and you're around your kiddos and you just need a time, as long as you know they're safe and they're wherever they are, take a moment for yourself, whether that literally means going into the car for like 5 minutes and crying hysterically or laughing hysterically, or listening to music, whatever, or honestly, it's probably that you're just gonna want silence. Those are all self-care. It is not selfish to take care of yourself so that you can keep giving for your family, for your children, for everyone else. So incredibly important, because so often I find, especially with parents, where you're trying to give from an empty cup, right? So remember that your health, your self-care is so incredibly important. It's basically it's non-negotiable, right? And if you want to continue to provide for everyone else. Journaling, also so incredibly powerful, literally just a great way to get rid of all of the stuff that's thinking in your head, that it's in your head. The best way that I have found to get things that just persist is to write them down. So journaling is really helpful in that regard, to just kind of, process all of the things. Read. Preferably something that you enjoy, and that's not going to be too incredibly stimulating, though you definitely can if it's fun for you. Why not? And spend time in nature. So time in nature is so incredibly important and powerful, because it actually changes our electromagnetic field. So when horses are actually the same thing. So if you're like, horses' hearts have a very large electromagnetic field, where they'll when you're near them, they'll actually change your emotions to some regard, and they'll feed off of you. So if you're scared, they can feel that because of their heart field. So anyways, going into nature and being within that also creates that shift, because we're not bombarded by all of the other electromagnetic field that's in around, but you just get to hear, right, be in that quiet aspect of nature, and like be with the water, be with the trees, whatever that is, the birds, and find that sense of inner peace. Like, I love to go for a walk or hike, more accurately, and honestly, like, just sit there. And if you like, you enjoy reading, journaling, anything really, or like even just walks around your neighborhood can be beneficial. It's not quite the same as being straight up surrounded by it, but still important. And like, stop and smell the roses, the flowers that are blooming, and just take time to take care of yourself. Oh yes, or spend time with your adult children. Also wonderful, be in community, because that's so incredibly important. We actually have different aspects of our nervous system. So the other parts of our nervous system, or that response, you have that sympathetic, that parasympathetic, and then there's another part of that parasympathetic is actually with bonding. And so when you're in community, when you feel like you're in a secure place, it's a lot easier to stay within that parasympathetic state, because that emotion of community, of feeling connected with others, will actually help to keep you in that parasympathetic state. So super cool. about that. Okay. And then here is a wonderful quote. So rest is not idleness, and to lie sometimes on the grass under the trees on a summer's day, listening to the murmur of water or watching the clouds float across the sky is by no means a waste of time. So again, like, and I picked this one in particular because it's summer, right? So we should be able to like do some of those summer things, like laying on the grass under the trees, watching the clouds go by. Like, don't feel guilty for wanting to taking time to do those things and enjoy, especially now when I think it's so important to hold on to those the small things that bring you joy, because like laying in the grass and looking at the clouds pass by, because doing nothing is not, I think with our society, it's always about production, and which pushes us into that sympathetic state, but so incredibly important, right, to take that time to rest. And so rest is still active, right? Even in the webinar, the interview that I did with Ethan, he had even talked about that. Ethan Childs, fitness trainer, he had mentioned that he takes an active rest day, right, where he's still moving his body, but it's doing stuff that allows for recovery of his muscles, because even when it comes to movement, rest is still important, right, because we need to be active, but then we need the rest and the recovery in order to keep going. So again, by no means a waste of time. Okay. And then the weekly challenge is to play every day. So do something you enjoy, literally anything. And if you learn something new, I would love it if you tell your friends, because everyone can use less stress nowadays. I firmly believe that. And so you can send them to my website, drkrisholson.com/SOH for Somewhere of Health, to watch the replay so they can learn how to be a little bit more parasympathetic. With that, I'll take questions. Right. I do an amazing job and there's no questions or clarifications. The other thing I wanted to mention is that I definitely also utilize a lot of supplements. So when it comes to folks who say have experienced significant more stress, so I'll give you an example. I have a patient who he was an athlete last year, and he was did all those things, but he also has a high stress job, and so what we ended up doing for him is we did some testing to actually see where his neurotransmitters are out at. And of course, his norepinephrine was like tanked. And so, right, that's literally because of this response where the chronic stress over time, right, just depletes the norepinephrine. His cortisol levels were also all janky, where they were really low in the morning and relatively higher at night. And part of that, right, being low in the morning is going to make it difficult to wake up, because cortisol is what wakes you up. And the other challenge with symptoms-wise is like fatigue and anxiety. That was actually his biggest complaints. And so with all the testing, then we started him on supplements. So I'll talk more about that next week, how I utilize amino acids and for the mind aspect, for the neurotransmitters for happiness and treating mental disorders or improving mental health. And now that he's been on the protocol, and we also did some cleaned up his digestive tract as well, and his anxiety is significantly better, and sleeping a lot better, recovery is a lot better, even like with him starting to do exercise. And what we end up doing with the amino acids is really also supporting the adrenal gland, right? Because it's that HPA axis, the hypothalamus, the pituitary, and the adrenal glands. And so we're trying to affect that axis in particular in order to help with that chronic stress response. So those are things that are also an option that would be, better to do on a individual basis, because everyone's a little bit different. But if there's more support that's needed, there are definitely plenty of options. I utilize a lot of herbs as well. Some of the herbs that I really like is what's it called? So there's two different types of herbs that I utilize. Actually, there was supposed to be a slide, but I guess it somehow got deleted. Is adaptogens. So adaptogens are going to be like rhodiola, which I've done an email series a little bit about, ashwagandha, and let's see. So those are like the some good ones. Holy basil is also a really great adaptogen. Maca is also an adaptogen, which is a Peruvian root. There's also the nervine. So adaptogens help with modulating that that adrenal response. So it actually can supports the adrenal cortex so that it can produce the cortisol, or it helps to like keep cortisol around longer, or help with a breakdown depending on what the situation needs. The other, which is actually how licorice works actually. So I utilize solid licorice extract often for my folks who I know that they have lower cortisol in the morning, and the reason for that is that the black licorice, what that does is actually prevents the breakdown of cortisol, so you're having your cortisol last longer throughout the day, which is really helpful if you have not enough cortisol to go around. One of the issues though with the licorice extract is that it can actually cause higher blood pressure because it's affecting the adrenal gland, which also affects the medulla, which is part of where your blood pressure, that helps to regulate your blood pressure. So you just have to be careful with like folks with high blood pressure. So I always check people's blood pressure before prescribing that and making sure that it's within reasonable numbers. And then there's nervines. So nervines actually help by working with the nervous system. So the way that they do that is different ways. So lavender will fall into that, where it's right. We talked a little bit about it, how it helps to change like the brain, the actual brain waves, and so part of that is its effect on the nervous system. Chamomile is another great one that affects that way, and then avena is actually one of my favorites. That is milky oat tops, and what I like about that is it's really for like those who are really fried, and so I'll utilize that really often in custom tinctures. But again, like there's herbs that we can utilize and combine to help manage like the stress response as well, for if it's gone right chronically, if you need a little bit more support than just these at-home things. There's lots and lots of different options. All right. Any other questions, concerns? If not, we'll go ahead and let you enjoy your rest of your Tuesday. All right. All right then. Thank you, everyone. It's been always a pleasure. I hope you learned something new. And yeah, go do something fun. Go play, do something, cuddle your pup, or, you know, whatever it is. Do something that you find joy in. All right. With that, everyone, it's always a pleasure, and take care.